The desert night was silent, broken only by the rumble of armored trucks rolling across endless sand. It was February 1991, in the midst of Operation Desert Storm. A U.S. Army supply convoy of 30 vehicles moved cautiously under the pale glow of the moon. Their mission was straightforward: deliver fuel and ammunition to a forward operating base near the Kuwaiti border. Captain Richard "Rick" Hayes, a seasoned officer with sharp instincts, sat in the lead Humvee, staring out into the shifting dunes. The map on his lap was smeared with dust and sweat. His orders were clear: follow Highway 8 north, but somewhere along the way, the road signs had disappeared, swallowed by the sandstorms that plagued the region. Behind him, Sergeant Michael Torres kept his eyes on the horizon. "Sir, I don't like this. These dunes all look the same. Feels like we're driving in circles." Hayes forced a calm tone. "We'll correct course. GPS isn't reliable out here, but we'll find the highway again. Stay sharp." The convoy pressed on. Hours passed and the radio chatter grew uneasy. Soldiers shifted in their seats, their nerves stretched thin, fuel gauges ticked lower with every mile. They were supposed to see the glow of the base by now, but the desert was empty. Finally, Corporal Jenkins' voice cracked through the radio. "Captain, I think we're lost. Sir, we should have hit the road junction 2 hours ago." Hayes clenched his jaw. He knew Jenkins was right. They had made a wrong turn. 30 vehicles carrying critical supplies, now stranded deep in the Iraqi desert with no clear way back. And worse, the longer they stayed lost, the greater the chance that enemy patrols would find them first. Sand and silence. Dawn came like a blade, slicing the night into bands of copper and white. The convoy halted on a low rise where wind had carved the sand into ripples like frozen waves. Engines idled, hatches opened, men blinked into the glare. Captain Rick Hayes climbed onto the hood of his Humvee and scanned the horizon through binoculars. Nothing but dunes, distances that lied, and a heat haze already puckering the air. No highway, no contrails, no friendlies. "Torres," he called down. "Fuel state." Sergeant Michael Torres, all forearms and grit, flipped through a clipboard. "Half the trucks are below 60%, 2 tankers at 50, water pallets are good for now." Hayes nodded and keyed the platoon net. "All stations, this is 6. We're taking a 10-minute halt. Check fluids, check weapons, hydrate. Nobody wanders. We'll push west to reacquire Highway 8. A beat of radio clicks answered. "Copy, Roger." Affirm. Thin voices wrapped in static. Specialist Nina Park, the convoy's best navigator when satellites behaved, crouched over the map with Hayes. "If we drifted east in that dust last night, the berm line should be here." She tapped a blank patch of tan paper. "Only problem is the desert keeps moving." "It's what deserts do," Hayes said. "Move us with it." They rolled again, a long snake of steel. Humvees out front, 5 tons and empty fuelers in the belly, a battered wrecker and 2 Bradleys tailing as angry shepherds. By mid-morning the sun pressed straight down, bleaching shadows from the world. The radio stayed quiet except for the occasional burst of Arabic music bleeding through on some civilian band. In the third truck, Corporal Jenkins counted power lines that weren't there and chewed the corner of a salt packet. "Sir," he came up on the net, "seeing mirages like 7-Eleven Slurpees out here." "Copy that, Jenkins," Torres replied. "Keep your eyes on the vehicle in front. Nobody drives into a dream." Laughter crackled, thin but real. It helped. Around noon, Park pointed. "Smoke, 2 o'clock." A thread of black smudged the horizon. The convoy slowed, fanned out. Hayes brought his Humvee to a stop and glassed the plume. "Burning hulk," he said. "Looks like a truck. No movement." Torres lifted the M60 on its pintle. "Could be bait. Could be water," Park whispered. They approached in a lazy S, guns covering. The wreck was an Iraqi cargo lorry, cooked down to ribs and wire. The sand around it glittered with char and safety glass. "Footprints," Jenkins said, kneeling. "Old, wind-sanded." Torres kicked a dented jerry can. Empty. He turned another with his boot. This one sloshed. He crouched, cracked the cap, sniffed. "Diesel." He looked up at Hayes. "We can polish it. Get us farther." "Tag it," Hayes said. 2 cans per HMTT. Secure on the left rack. Move fast." Men jogged back and forth, cans thumping. Heat rolled off the wreck like a furnace door. Sir, Park said quietly, staring north. Hear that? At first Hayes heard only wind, then faint, metallic, clink, clink, clink. Not random, rhythmic, like dog tags knocking a buckle. The sound drifted, disappeared, came back from another direction. Mount up, Hayes snapped. We're rolling. As the column pulled out, a glint winked from a dune crest to the west. Torres swung the M60. Got glass scope maybe. Rifles cracked. Sand leapt around the lead Humvee in angry spurts. Contact west. 300 meters. Hayes barked. Bradley 1. Suppress. The Bradley coughed a short burst, Cokes hosing the crest. A shadow scissored away, small and fast. Another muzzle flash popped from the adjacent rise, then another from the rear. Ambush L-shaped, Torres shouted. They were watching the wreck. Smoke, forward and left, Hayes ordered. The Humvee's launcher thunked. Grey billowed, a moving wall. Convoy pushed through the gap. Do not stop, do not stop. Trucks surged, engines bellowing. The Bradley's turret tracked, spitting fire in disciplined bursts. Rounds punched sand where men had been a heartbeat earlier. The ambushers were professionals, or desperate. Pop, relocate, pop again. Gnats with teeth. A 5-ton lurched, rear tire shredding under a lucky hit. The wrecker slewed out of line, hooked the bumper with practiced violence. I got him, yelled Specialist Devers over the net. Drag and go. They plowed through the smoke, machine gun thunder fading as the dunes ate the sound. After 5 brutal minutes, the only noise was their own breathing and the clatter of loose gear. Damage, Hayes asked. 2 holes in Sheet 6's sidewall. Patched, Torres reported. No casualties. Whoever they were, they didn't press it. They didn't need to, Park said. They marked us, probed us, and learned we're alone. Hayes looked at the fuel gauges. Needles had sagged from the sprint and the drag. He felt the math tightening like a knot. We'll set a short halt in the next differlide and recheck bearings. Sir, Jenkins said, voice smaller now. What if the differlide's where they want us? Hayes scanned the horizon, the same horizon that had lied all morning. Then we make where they want us a place they regret. They found a shallow bowl between 2 long-backed dunes and nosed the trucks in, hull down from 3 directions. Men dropped to one knee, rifles on sectors. Park triangulated with compass and shadow stick, scribbling on the map with a pencil stump. Best call is still west-southwest, she said. If we hit the berm line, we'll know it. After that, north to the highway. Copy, Hayes said. He keyed the net. All stations, we're moving again in 5. Eat something now. Sip water. Check buddies' faces for salt rings. As he clicked off, Torres spoke without looking up. We're not just lost, sir. We're noticed. I know, Hayes said. What's the plan when night falls? Hayes watched a curl of dust unravel on the far dune and vanish. We turn the night into our ally. We move slow, blacked out, no silhouettes on ridgelines, and we remember Rule 1. Torres raised an eyebrow. Don't die. Don't stop, Hayes said. Stopping is dying slower. He dropped from the hood, shouldered his rifle, and walked the line, touching every truck like a coach slapping helmets before the 4th quarter. Faces lifted as he passed, scared, sunburned, stubborn. The desert didn't care if they were brave. It didn't care if they were right. But somewhere west there was a highway, and beyond that a base with shade and water and a map that didn't lie. They would find it or make one. Ghost roads. By late afternoon the desert was a furnace. Heat shimmered off the trucks, making them look like they were melting into the dunes. The convoy pressed on in silence, wheels crunching over sand and gravel, every man straining for a sign of asphalt, a road marker, anything that screamed civilization. Specialist Nina Park held the map like it was sacred scripture. She used the sun, her compass, even the wind, trying to keep them true west. Every so often she muttered under her breath, "If we're right, if we're right." Inside the Humvee, Captain Hayes chewed on the inside of his cheek. He had led missions in Europe, trained in the forests of Germany, drilled in the cold mud of Kentucky. But this blank, shifting ocean of sand was a different kind of battlefield. There were no landmarks, no cover, only exposure. The enemy could be anywhere, and yet nowhere. Sergeant Torres leaned out the window, scanning the ridgelines. "Feels like we're driving inside a rifle scope, sir." "Maybe we are," Hayes said. An hour later, they spotted something, the faint line of broken asphalt, barely visible under wind-blown sand. The convoy slowed, soldiers craning their necks. "Highway?" Torres asked, half hopeful. Park shook her head. "No, too narrow. Probably an old supply road. Could be Iraqi military." The first Humvee rolled onto the cracked surface. Tires hissed over sand, filling the gaps. For the first time in 2 days, the men felt the illusion of progress, like they were back in the world of maps and straight lines. But then Jenkins, riding in the third truck, said what everyone was thinking. "Why's it so quiet?" Hayes didn't answer. He was staring at the road itself. The tracks weren't theirs, and they weren't recent. Old tread marks, half swallowed by sand, stretched ahead into the shimmering horizon. "Sir," Park whispered, "look." At the edge of the road lay a rusted helmet, sun-bleached and half-buried. A few yards farther, twisted metal, the skeleton of a truck, maybe Soviet-made. "This isn't a road," Hayes muttered. "It's a graveyard." They pushed forward anyway, because there was no choice. The road dipped between 2 dunes, forming a shallow valley, and that's when the world erupted. The crack of RPGs tore through the silence. The late Humvee exploded in flame, a fireball lighting up the desert. Men screamed over the radio. The convoy slammed to a halt, trucks colliding, sand erupting around them. "Contact! Contact! Front and high ground!" Torres roared, already behind the M60. He opened up, tracers stitching the ridge. Hayes hit the ground, radio in hand. "Bradley 1, suppress West Ridge. Bradley 2, cover the east." The Bradleys bellowed, their cannons spitting fire into the dunes. Dust clouds erupted where enemy fighters had hidden. Shadows darted, rifles cracked. A machine gun opened from the north, hammering the stalled 5 tons. "Move! Get those trucks through!" Hayes shouted. But the road was blocked. The burning Humvee, a wall of twisted steel. Torres ducked back into cover. "Sir, we're boxed in." Hayes' jaw tightened. This wasn't an ambush. It was a kill zone, planned long before they stumbled onto it. Whoever had fought here last had died the same way, caught between dunes, funneled onto this road of ghosts. And now it was the forgotten convoy's turn. The kill zone. The first minutes were pure chaos. Smoke poured from the lead Humvee, its flames whipping in the wind. Soldiers crawled for cover that didn't exist, ducking behind tires and axles, clutching rifles like lifelines. "Get the wounded out," Hayes bellowed, sprinting toward the wreck. The heat was like standing in front of a blast furnace, but inside he could hear voices, agonized, broken. Private First Class Daniels and Corporal Jenkins hauled a screaming driver through the shattered windshield, his uniform aflame. Torres dove on him with a poncho, smothering the fire. The man's cries faded to sobs, and the smell of burnt flesh drifted over the desert. Above them, enemy gunfire rattled the sky. AK-47 bursts, sharp and furious, mixed with the deeper boom of RPGs. An explosion ripped through a fuel truck, sending a geyser of black smoke and fire into the air. "Bradley 2, where the hell is my cover fire?" Hayes barked into the radio. "Engaging, engaging," came the reply. The Bradley's turret spat orange tongues, ripping apart the dune crest. Sand and rock cascaded down like a waterfall, burying enemy shooters. But for every muzzle silenced, another lit up. The ridges around them flickered like a constellation of death. Park crawled beside Hayes, her face streaked with sweat and dust. "Sir, we can't stay here. They've got us pinned from 3 angles." Hayes's eyes burned from the smoke. He saw it clearly now. The road was a trap, a slaughter lane designed by men who knew exactly where convoys would seek shelter. Old wrecks were proof. They weren't the first to die here. "Torres," Hayes shouted, "we push west. Get the Bradleys moving. Everyone else lays suppressive fire. On it." Torres swung his M60 back toward the ridgeline, unleashing a storm of tracers. Other rifles joined in, a cacophony of desperate defiance. Hayes rose halfway out of cover, waving his arm. "Go, go, go!" Engines roared. Trucks lurched forward, drivers slamming through gears, rubber spitting sand. The burning Humvee still blocked the path, its twisted frame like a coffin lid across the road. "Ram it!" Hayes screamed. The lead 5-ton slammed into the wreck, pushing with a howl of torque. Metal shrieked, flames licked. Then with a final groan, the Humvee skidded sideways enough for trucks to squeeze through. The convoy surged like blood through an artery, wounded but moving. RPGs chased them, streaking past and detonating in sand geysers. One truck took a hit to the rear axle, flipped sideways, and tumbled into the dunes. Men leapt clear, some screaming,
some silent. Hayes refused to look back. He couldn't. Not now. Survival meant forward. Always forward. By the time the sun sagged into a red smear on the horizon, the convoy had broken free of the kill zone. Smoke trails stretched behind them, marking their escape like scars across the desert. They finally halted in the shadow of a jagged escarpment, engines rattling, radiators hissing. Men spilled out, faces grey with dust and shock. Torres staggered over, helmet askew. Casualty report, 2 dead, 6 wounded bad. Truck 7 gone. We've lost almost a quarter of our fuel. Park sat on the sand, staring at nothing. They knew this place. They've done this before. We walked straight into history repeating itself. Hayes stood silent, chest heaving, staring back at the horizon where fire still licked the sky. He knew Torres and Park were right. The enemy hadn't just found them. They had waited for them. The forgotten convoy was bleeding, low on fuel, and still far from Highway 8. But Hayes also knew something else. If they stopped now, they would become just another burned-out wreck on that cursed road, and he wasn't ready to let the desert claim them. Not yet. Nightfall in the dunes. The sun bled into the horizon, leaving streaks of crimson that melted into deep purple. Then came the desert night, cold, sharp, and silent, except for the faint tick of cooling engines. The convoy huddled at the base of a rocky escarpment, trucks arranged in a crude circle. Headlights were blacked out. Fires were forbidden. Only the stars above gave light, a billion pinpricks staring down at 30 exhausted, dust-covered soldiers. Hayes stood at the perimeter with Torres, both men scanning the dunes through night vision goggles. Shapes wavered in green haze, rocks, shadows, maybe more. The desert was never empty. It was just good at hiding. They'll come again, Torres muttered. Not their style to hit and let us walk away. Hayes nodded. He knew the enemy had patience. They would follow the convoy's trail of smoke, wait for fatigue and fear to do their work. Behind them, medics worked quietly under red-lensed flashlights. The wounded groaned as bandages were tightened. IV bags rigged from rifle stocks. The stench of blood mixed with diesel, a reminder of how thin their line had grown. Specialist Nina Park crouched over the map once more. She used the stars and compass, her pencil scratching on the battered paper. If we keep pushing west, we should hit the berm line. Past that is Highway 8. How far? Hayes asked. She hesitated. At least 60 kilometers, maybe more, depending on how far east we drifted in that sandstorm. 60 kilometers. To men running low on fuel and water, it might as well have been the moon. Jenkins wandered over, eyes hollow. He held a canteen in one hand, shook it, almost dry. Some of the guys are talking, sir, asking if it's worth it. Hayes fixed him with a hard look. You tell them this. Every step west is worth it. Every step keeps us alive. We stop, we die. Understood? Jenkins swallowed, nodded and shuffled back to the others. The first shot cracked just after midnight. A bullet snapped into the escarpment, showering sparks. Then another. Shadows moved on the ridge, firing down with the confidence of hunters. Contact north. Torres roared, already laying fire uphill. Tracers slashed the night, the ridgeline erupting in return fire. Hayes grabbed the radio. Bradley 1. Suppress north. Bradley 2. Cover east flank. Engines growled, turrets whined, and the Bradleys unleashed streams of fire into the darkness. Explosions lit the night, momentary suns against black. But the enemy was clever. They didn't attack in waves. They needled, poked, retreated. Bursts of fire here, then silence, then a crack from another angle. Psychological warfare as much as physical. Sir, Park shouted over the din. They're testing us, keeping us awake, making us burn ammo. Hayes fired a burst into the dark, teeth gritted. Then we test them back. Hold the line. Nobody breaks. Hours crawled. Skirmishes flared and died, leaving silence heavy as stone. By dawn, every soldier's face was pale with exhaustion. Eyes darted at every sound. Fingers cramped on triggers. When the sun finally rose, Hayes looked at his men, worn, bruised, running on fumes, but alive. We move, he said, voice hoarse but firm. West, before they realize we're not corpses yet. And so the convoy rolled again, engines coughing, black smoke trailing into the desert sky. Behind them, the escarpment loomed like a graveyard marker, already waiting for the next victims of the forgotten convoy's road. Thirst. By mid-morning, the desert heat was merciless. The sun rose like a hammer, beating down with such force that even the metal of the trucks blistered to the touch. Soldiers sat in their cabs with collars open, helmets tilted back, lips cracked. The water shortage hit fast. Each man had been carrying a canteen, but after days of forced marches, the supply pallets were shrinking. When Specialist Jenkins tipped his canteen to his mouth and found only a single drop, panic flickered in his eyes. "Sir," he croaked to Torres, "we're not going to make it 60 clicks with what we got left." Torres didn't answer. He just kept driving, jaw tight, sweat running down his neck. Captain Hayes knew it too. He stood in the lead Humvee, map spread across his knees, but his thoughts weren't on bearings anymore. They were on his men. Already the heat was turning discipline into delirium. Private First Class Daniels staggered out of his truck during a halt, eyes glassy. "There," he whispered, pointing toward the horizon. "Water! I can see it! A whole lake!" Two men rushed to hold him back. It was just a mirage, an illusion painted by heat and desperation. But Daniels fought them, screaming, "It's right there! Don't you see it?" Hayes ordered him tied back in the truck, not out of cruelty but mercy. He had seen this before. Dehydration breaking minds before bodies. By noon, the convoy spotted another burned-out vehicle on the horizon. They approached cautiously, rifles trained. It was an old Soviet BTR, wrecked years before, its turret canted at a broken angle. Inside they found only bones, sun-bleached, brittle, fused to the steel. Someone had died here long before, another ghost swallowed by the desert. But in the cargo bay, Torres pried open a metal box. Inside, miraculously, were half a dozen glass bottles, corked tight. He lifted one, shook it, liquid sloshing inside. "Water," he breathed. The men crowded close, hands trembling. Hayes snatched the bottle, uncorked it, sniffed, his face twisted. "Not water," he said grimly. "Diesel. Probably used the bottles for storage." A collective groan rippled through the convoy. Jenkins swore under his breath. Daniels wept openly. Hayes slammed the cork back in, voice like iron. "Listen up! This desert wants us to break, wants us to turn on each other. We don't. We stay sharp, we keep moving, and we make it out. That's an order." The silence that followed wasn't agreement. It was the silence of men too weak to argue. That night, as the convoy crawled west under cover of darkness, the first real cracks in leadership appeared. Torres pulled Hayes aside. His face was hard, his voice low. "Sir, we've got maybe 36 hours of water left, and that's if nobody wastes it. You keep pushing 60 clicks, we'll lose half the men before we see the berm." Hayes glared back. "And what's your plan, Sergeant?" "Sit in the sand and wait for Iraqis to finish the job." "I'm saying," Torres growled, "maybe we cut the load, ditch half the trucks, take only what we need and move faster. Every engine we keep is another mouth we gotta water." Hayes' jaw tightened. "That convoy stays together. Every truck, every soldier. We were sent to deliver, and we'll deliver." Torres leaned closer, eyes burning. "Sir, with respect, the desert doesn't give a damn about your orders. It only cares how fast it can kill us." For a long moment, the two men locked eyes. Hayes, the officer, clinging to mission and duty. Torres, the sergeant, clinging to survival. Neither man yielded. As the engines rumbled back to life, and the convoy pushed deeper into the night, Park scribbled on her map. Jenkins muttered to himself in the dark, and Daniels whispered about lakes no one else could see. The forgotten convoy rolled on, but unity was thinning, just like the water. And in the dunes beyond, faint lights flickered, watching, waiting, closing in, shadows at midnight. The desert was black and endless. The only sounds were the low growl of engines, and the crunch of tires on sand. But beneath that monotone rhythm, unease gnawed at the men like hunger. Hayes rode in the lead Humvee, radio pressed to his ear, scanning the horizon through night vision goggles. The dunes rippled like frozen waves, each crest a potential ambush site. He thought of the kill zone they'd survived, and knew deep down, lightning could strike twice. Torres was less subtle. Standing in the gunner's hatch of the second vehicle, his eyes darted constantly, finger tight on the M60's trigger. "They're out there," he muttered, almost to himself. "I can smell 'em. Around 0100 hours. Specialist Park tapped Hayes on the shoulder, pointing west. "Sir." But then he saw them too, tiny flickering dots weaving in and out of the dunes, too low to be celestial, too erratic to be natural. "They're signaling," Park whispered. Moments later, The first shot cracked. A bullet pinged off the hood, sparking against steel. Then came a barrage. Tracers lit the night, hissing through the air like fireflies from hell. Contact, East Ridge. Torres bellowed, opening up with the M60. Chaos erupted. RPGs streaked overhead, one slamming into a truck's rear and detonating in a blossom of fire. Screams tore through the radio as men scrambled from the burning vehicle. Bradley 1, suppress east. Bradley 2, pivot west. Move, move, move. Hayes shouted into the handset. The Bradleys roared to life, cannons thundering, their muzzle flashes tearing daylight into the night. The dunes shook with the impact, sand raining down as enemy silhouettes scattered like insects. But this attack wasn't about destruction. It was about erosion. Small arms, quick strikes, vanishing before the Bradleys could pin them down. Guerrilla warfare at its purest. Private Daniels, half delirious from thirst, fired wildly into the dark, screaming curses. Jenkins dragged him down, hissing, "Save your ammo, damn it! They're ghosts!" A mortar round whistled overhead and landed just outside the convoy's circle. Sand geysered, slamming men to the ground. Hayes felt the tremor in his chest. He keyed the radio. "All units, maintain perimeter, hold formation, do not break." But inside he knew the truth. They were unraveling. By dawn the enemy melted away as if they had never existed. The convoy sat in silence, smoke drifting from one destroyed truck. The men slumped in exhaustion. Torres confronted Hayes openly now, in front of the men. "You see what's happening? They're picking us apart, one piece at a time. You keep marching us straight into their teeth." Hayes glared back, his voice like steel. "And you think running off into the desert alone is better? That's suicide, Sergeant. It's survival." Torres shot back. His eyes flicked to the men, half of whom were nodding grimly, lips cracked, canteens empty. For the first time, the convoy wasn't just fighting the enemy outside, it was fighting the enemy within. As silence fell again, Specialist Park clutched her map and whispered to no one in particular, "If we make it out, it won't be together."
Breaking point. By midday, the desert sun was merciless again. Men stumbled as they unloaded casualties from the burning truck, their movements sluggish, mechanical. Sweat had long since dried to salt on their uniforms. The convoy was reduced now. 2 trucks destroyed, 1 abandoned. The men counted every bullet, every sip of water, every mile like a bead on a rosary. And with each count, the strain on discipline grew sharper. It was Torres who finally said what half the men were thinking. During a rest halt, he gathered a small knot of soldiers, Jenkins, Daniels, a few others, while Hayes checked the perimeter. His voice was low but steady. "We keep following Hayes, we die out here. He's clinging to orders from a world that doesn't exist anymore. The brass isn't coming. Nobody even knows where we are. But if we cut the dead weight, ditch the extra trucks, move light and fast, we stand a chance." Jenkins wiped cracked lips with the back of his hand. "You saying mutiny, Sarge?" "I'm saying survival," Torres snapped. "You want to rot in the sand like those skeletons we passed? Or you want to see your family again?" The men exchanged looks. Daniel stared at the horizon, eyes hollow, whispering, "I just want water." Hayes returned at the wrong moment. He saw the huddle, the tense faces. He didn't need to hear the words. He knew mutiny when he saw it. Back in formation. Hayes barked, voice like thunder. "We move in 5. Torres stood tall, squaring off with him. "With respect, sir, no. Not until you admit this mission's dead. You're gonna march us straight into another ambush. And for what? To keep your record clean? To pretend Washington cares?" The air went still. Soldiers froze, watching 2 leaders collide in the sand. Hayes stepped closer, eyes blazing. "Those trucks carry supplies for men who are still alive, Sergeant. Supplies they need. You want to throw them away, then fine. Walk into the desert alone, but don't you dare ask these men to break their oath." Torres didn't flinch. Oath doesn't mean dying for nothing. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Jenkins muttered, "Maybe he's right, sir. Maybe we should just cut loose." A ripple went through the convoy. Doubt, heavy as the sun above. Specialist Park broke it. She slammed the map case against her knee, her voice shaking but loud. "Enough. You want to fight each other. Do it later. Right now the enemy is out there, not here. If we split, we're finished. If we stay, maybe we've got a shot. But only if we stop tearing ourselves apart." Her outburst cut through the haze like a gunshot. Hayes and Torres both stared at her, the men shifting uneasily. Finally, Hayes exhaled, slow and heavy. "We move. Together. End of discussion." Torres said nothing, but the look in his eyes promised the argument wasn't over. That night, as the convoy crept forward under a pale moon, Park whispered to herself in the back of the Humvee, "This isn't a convoy anymore. It's a coin toss. Fire in the dark." The desert night was unnaturally still. The stars burned cold above, and the only sound was the slow grind of gears as the convoy crawled westward, engines muffled, headlights blacked out. Every man held his breath, listening to the silence, waiting for it to break, and then it did. The first explosion came from the rear, a blinding flash that swallowed the last 5-ton truck in a fireball. The blast wave rattled every vehicle, knocking men flat. Shrapnel clanged against steel, tearing canvas, ripping flesh. "Contact! Rear guard!" Torres shouted, already swiveling his M60. Tracers sprayed into the dunes, carving the night open. Hayes leapt from the lead Humvee, radio clutched tight. "Bradley 2, turn about. Lay fire on that ridge. Bradley 1, cover the convoy's front." The Bradleys roared, turrets spitting thunder, but the enemy was everywhere, shadows darting in and out of moonlight, RPGs streaking like fiery arrows. One slammed into a Humvee, flipping it onto its side. Screams tore through the comms. Inside the chaos, Specialist Park clutched her map against her chest, huddled behind a truck tire. Her heart pounded in her ears. None of her lines, her bearings, her careful calculations mattered now. The desert had swallowed their plans whole. Jenkins dragged a wounded soldier to cover, blood soaking his uniform. "Where the hell are they coming from?" he shouted. "Everywhere." Torres roared back, emptying a belt into the ridge. His face was twisted with fury, eyes wild in the green glow of tracers. Hayes slammed his fist against the radio. "All units, push forward, break through, do not stop." But the road ahead was already blocked. Another explosion cratered the sand, flipping a truck onto its roof, wheels spinning uselessly in the air. The convoy was boxed in again, just like the kill zone days before. Then it happened. A mortar round slammed into the center of the formation, toppling crates and shredding canvas. In the chaos, Torres dropped from his hatch, grabbed Hayes by the collar, and dragged him behind a smoking Humvee. "You see now?" Torres shouted, his face inches from Hayes's. "We stay together. We die together. You want to keep following the damn map. You'll get us all buried out here." Hayes shoved him off, rage boiling in his chest. "And you think splitting up will save us? You'll lead these men straight into the desert to die thirsty, alone, forgotten." Their argument was drowned out by the staccato roar of machine guns, the shriek of another RPG. The night was fire and fury, soldiers shouting, bleeding, clinging to life. And in that moment, two leaders, locked in a war within a war, the men around them had no choice but to follow whichever voice they believed would keep them alive. By dawn, the survivors huddled in the smoldering wreckage of what was left of the convoy. 2 more trucks gone, 5 more dead, half their ammunition burned away in the night. Hayes sat on the sand, blood seeping from a cut on his temple. Torres crouched across from him, hands black with soot, jaw set like stone. Neither spoke. Because there was nothing left to say, only one truth hanging heavy in the desert air. The forgotten convoy was almost out of time. The last march. The desert was quiet again, but it was not peace. It was the silence after a massacre. The surviving soldiers gathered in a broken circle, rifles across their knees, eyes sunken. They no longer looked like a convoy. They looked like ghosts still walking. Captain Hayes stood before them, bandage stained on his forehead, voice raw. "We keep moving west. Highway 8 is out there, and if we reach it, we live. That's the mission." His words hung in the dry air. No one cheered. No one even nodded. Then Torres stepped forward, M60 slung across his chest. His voice was calm, deadly calm. "No. The mission died back at the kill zone. Out here, there's only survival. If we keep hauling these trucks, we'll run dry before we see pavement. We leave them, we take what we can carry, and we move fast." Murmurs spread through the survivors. Some looked to Hayes, others to Torres. The choice had come at last. Hayes's eyes locked with Torres. 2 men, forged by war, broken by sand. Both right, both wrong. Finally, Hayes spoke, each word like gravel. "Fine, you want to cut loose. Take your men, but I won't abandon the supplies. Someone out there needs them. Even if we don't make it, they will." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Jenkins, trembling, rose to his feet. "I'll go with Torres. I just want to live, sir."
A few others followed, 13 in all. They gathered weapons, stripped water, and slipped into the dunes under Torres' command, shadows fading into the horizon. The rest stayed with Hayes, loading the wounded, patching holes, coaxing sputtering engines to life. They moved west in a staggered line, like pilgrims chasing a miracle. 2 days later, the desert delivered its verdict. Hayes' reduced convoy, battered but unbroken, crested a ridge and saw it, Highway 8, shimmering black under the sun, and beyond it, an American armored column, Salvation. The men cheered weakly, some wept openly. Hayes simply closed his eyes and whispered, "We made it." Torres' group was never seen again. No tracks, no signals, no remains, just silence. The desert had claimed them, as it had so many before. Weeks later, when Hayes stood before a debrief panel in Riyadh, he told the story plainly, of the ambush, the kill zone, the mutiny, the fire in the night. He spared no detail, but when asked about Torres and the men who followed him, Hayes simply said, "They're still out there, somewhere, part of the desert now." The forgotten convoy passed into rumor, half buried under official reports, half whispered in barracks. Some said Hayes was reckless, others said Torres was a coward. No one agreed on the truth, but every soldier who heard the story carried one lesson from it. Sometimes the enemy is not just the man with the rifle, sometimes it is the desert itself, and sometimes the worst battles are fought inside your own ranks. Don't miss the next story. Subscribe now and join us for more untold war tales.